Chapter 100, Heartlock Prison, Part 2-2. Translator, Strivon. Since Huang Bingzhen's soul was near the material plane, Luo Nan's dark chains were also close for the sake of controlling him. Therefore, the chains could not be hidden from Cat Eye's direct gaze. Cat Eyes then cast Luo Nan a somewhat odd look, it partly because he looked like he was kill-stealing. Another part of it was due to the chains themselves. Well, it did not matter what Cat Eyes thought. Luo Nan knew what he was doing. The instant the dark chains had struck their target, the mass of soul smoke was not destroyed. Instead, the mass had oddly coalesced together. At this time, the unseen foe continued to unleash powerful mental attacks. A slice of area in the private room was completely enveloped with powerful storms on the mental plane. Any power that wished to face this attack would be instantly and utterly defeated. The problem was, who would face those attacks head-on? Luo Nan already possessed ample experience of attack and defense on the mental plane through the human-faced arachnid and through Elder Mo Lun of the Blood Flame Order. He knew where his superiority laid in. Whether it was the format of My Heart's a Prison or tempo of soul breathing, they were all layouts formed by oneself. They did not need to be driven by external forces. Though the mental plane screamed with a storm, Luo Nan's dark chains merely trembled a few times. The chains did not try to wrest away power, did not try to take up ground, and did not try to forcefully obstruct the storm. Instead, the dark chains stably erected those layouts. Luo Nan's body and soul structure was like this from inside out, supported by the dark chains. Aside from his fleshly body, which was lacking, the pressure was certainly still there. His nervous system was being stimulated, and there were effects on his skin, flesh, and organs. But this was nothing compared to yesterday night, where he had nearly died from the imbalance between body and soul due to the Wraith Sign's power boost. He coughed a few times and breathed steadily. Huang Bingzhen's maimed wisp of a soul was affected by the chain's format and was stabilized. Faint light smoke billowed all around the soul, a portion of which came circulating back. A bit of the figure's outline was restored. The chains then forcefully pressed down on this mangled smoke of a soul back into Huang Bingzhen's body. Flesh and soul merged into one at last, but only God would know of any residual effects. The pressure on Cat Eyes plummeted, allowing her senses to become much more responsive. Her eyes captured Luo Nan's entire series of actions, and no matter how awkward she found it, she was forced to exclaim in admiration. "This is a soul-quelling technique. You took up a nice stance." Huang Bingzhen may not have been a person worth saving. Luo Nan may not have had a good opinion of him, but he had acted because he did not want to see a living person die like a candle being blown out. In addition, this was more or less a stance, just as Cat Eyes said. He wanted to convey the following to the powerful enemy: your methods of mental storms are useless against me and those who I protect. Cat Eyes was an example, and the 90% dead Huang Bingzhen was an example as well. Luo Nan's declaration on his stance was effective. The mental storm began to dwindle down when Huang Bingzhen's soul returned to his body. Subsequently, the enemy would occasionally cause the storm to resurge, but these should be a series of tests against Luo Nan's grounding. The enemy was testing to see how it would break through Luo Nan's structures, but the enemy found no success in the end. The mental attack was withdrawn, but the senses still remained in existence. The enemy did not conceal its target at all. The enemy's mental senses were similar to Cat Eyes' high-power active radar, as they constantly covered the interior of the room. The enemy was dead fixed on watching Luo Nan down to a penetrating level. In any case, the turmoil on the mental plane had calmed down a bit, but the tension of the material plane's atmosphere was just getting started. Although Luo Nan's skills on the mental plane were truly inconceivable, ultimately they were not applied on the material plane. Ability users could see what he did, but it was hard for ordinary people to see. They were on a completely different tempo. Guo Ju, who had been constantly yelling to vacate the area, denounced Cat Eyes even further when she cried out that there was a killer. He proclaimed that Cat Eyes was making things up. He was correct in a certain sense, but unfortunately, his actions were meaningless. Zhu Weilan was absolutely disinclined to take heed of him at this time. What Zhu Weilan was focused on was Cat Eyes' warning and the nasally grunt that was brimming with ill intentions. The more time passed, the stranger Cat Eyes and Luo Nan's actions became, they were clearly a bit nuts. However, Zhu Weilan had more or less some knowledge and understanding of these certified professionals. They accessed a level that was different to that of ordinary people. Out of consideration for the safety of those involved, Zhu Weilan proactively deployed personnel and arranged a police cordon. Of course, he did not forget to ask the technicians to go search for the origin of the nasally grunt. Zhu Weilan shifted focus. Guo Ju did not look too happy on the surface, but Zhu Weilan still sighed a breath of relief. From his perspective, it did not matter if the situation was in a deadlock or if there had been any changes in the situation. They were not important. What was truly important laid in the robots that followed their programmed operations. 3 multifunction robots had already finished completing their transporting task. The last remaining human body was none other than Huang Bingjun. They put him on a stretcher. Their metal bodies were driven by their programming as they moved out the door. The people on the scene were disinclined to pay attention to the 3 hindering robots. In any case, the scene of the incident was nearly completely destroyed. It did not matter how many people the robots moved, it would not make a difference. Guo Ju, on the other hand, felt like his heart was about to burst. He looked out from the corner of his eyes, and his focus was always on the body of the robot in front. He saw it make its way ahead as it dragged the stretcher. He finally let out a mental sigh of relief when the robot and the stretcher gradually left the room. He made it past. His relief had not lasted for more than half a second when an enormous force attacked the stumpy metal machine in the next moment. The 100-kilogram body flew through the air with a bang, colliding fiercely against the companion behind it. The 3 robots were struck flying back one after another, like several dominoes falling down all over the place. Their running operation was turned into a complete mess. They just struggled on the ground, but they could not climb back up at all. Worst of all was the stretcher on the robot in the middle. The entire module was ejected, and Huang Bingjun laid on the stretcher like a duck without feathers. He flew halfway across the room through the air and fell hard. The stretcher module was in the air a bit longer than Huang Bingjun. When it fell, it just so happened to smack Huang Bingjun in the face. After a muffled thud, there was actually the sound of moaning. "He's alive." The situation had suddenly changed, and Cat Eyes could not help but be distracted for a moment. Her gaze swept onto the naked duck, and she gasped once again in admiration towards Luo Nan's brilliant skill. Just based on this alone, Luo Nan's achievements in soul studies was enough to cause Mr. Bai, an authoritative scholar on the soul, to raise his brows in shock. Indeed, this fellow was quite the hidden boss, who knew what sort of items were hidden in his stomach. But soon, Cat Eyes had to quickly focus her mind, since there was someone who was gradually walking through what had been an empty entrance. A dazzling white was displayed under the dim lights. The person who arrived was wearing a snow-white loose-fitting robe, looking incompatible with the lively activity going on in the scene of reality. The person was wearing the robes of a priest, one that would only appear in religious events. Compared to standard clothes, the color of the robes was really excessive. Even though the lights were of messy colors, it seemed that all of the mottled rays were able to be reflected off, leaving behind a dazzling and pure white. Guo Ju was not too far away from the entrance. The collision and damage to the robots made his heart feel like it was about to burst. Now that he saw the dazzling white, a person suddenly came to mind. His beating heart instantly choked in his throat, clogging his throat so much that he would soon suffocate. Chapter 101, Fairchild Part 1-2. Translator, Strivon. No, 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 they shouldn't know who I am. Guo Ju wanted to control his nervous thoughts, and he did his utmost to remain calm. He wanted to turn his gaze away if he had the chance, but doing so would be really suspicious. His only choice was to feign an expression of surprise, or perhaps he should mix in a little bit of anger as well. However, the sparkling white before his eyes was the indelible source of his fear. He did his best to endure it for a second, but all secondary thoughts were soon dispelled clean from his mind. He could only look over with trembling fear as he stiffly took in the information before his eyes. Guo Ju saw the tall and sturdy figure beneath the white robes. A bit further up the body was the deep and clear silhouette of a Western face. The skin was a healthy tan color. This was not enough information to identify the person. However, when Guo Ju's gaze rested on the side of this person's face, he saw flat scarlet-red skin and flesh at the location where an ear ought to be. Guo Ju's eyes contracted entirely, as if they were pricked by a needle. Even though Guo Ju could only see one side of the face, Guo Ju was certain that the other side would be the same. Truth bless, oh damn, never mind. Guo Ju could not endure it any longer. He turned his gaze to avoid further stimulation, but this action was meaningless. For in this very moment, he felt his calves spasm, and he felt a cold, chill blow across his neck. The sensation turned fiery in the blink of an eye. It felt like his skin and flesh were splitting from being roasted. Guo Ju withdrew, pretending not to notice the person coming in. However, Zhu Weilun could not do the same. This fellow's sudden appearance was suspicious no matter how he looked at him, especially with those bizarre clothes. The man had to at least explain how he had gotten past the defensive perimeter arranged by the special police and had suddenly appeared within the room. Zhu Weilun placed his hand to the side of his weapon's holster and was just about to interrogate the man when the sounds of a series of bodies falling to the ground could be heard coming from outside. The heavily armed special police, equipped in exoskeleton armors, had collapsed seemingly simultaneously. Zhu Weilun's reactions could not be described as slow during this time. He instantly pulled out his gun and opened fire. The hand railgun designed for the special police forces exploded out with fatal bullets, but the end result was just a large hole blasted through the door frame. The angle of deviation was enormous, exceeding the realm of common sense. Zhu Weilun knew what had happened. An incorporeal bullet had penetrated his brain the instant he pulled the trigger. An intense jolt had caused him to lose control over his body. He tried to recover as he stumbled a step forward, but ultimately His control over his body had become completely weak. It would be very hard for him to recover in a short time frame. Every single attack had happened on the incorporeal and formless mental plane. The enemy was powerful and possessed an extraordinary strength. Normal people were powerless against him. This man had cleared out the space in a few short minutes before he walked inside with leisure. Luo Nan saw that the pupils of this man were dark gray, giving off a feeling of desolation and callousness. However, the fierce means displayed by this man increased the tension and uncertainty of the situation to its limits. Of course, Luo Nan also noticed the lack of ears on the side of this man's face. With this sort of appearance, along with his tyrannical strength, this man must certainly be well known in the world of ability users. At this time, Cat Eyes also saw this man's figure clearly. She moaned in the encrypted channel. "Big trouble now, it's Fairchild. Fairchild of the Order of Justice. Yes, the ears of truth, the mad believer of the Order of Justice." Luo Nan was not blind. That Guo Ju, he has responsibilities with the Order of Justice. Why does he have that sort of expression when one of his own is here? Humph, it is already quite admirable for him to not cry out for his mommy the moment that the secular side meets the truth side, when shallow believers meet mad believers, or when the exchangers meets the executioners. The Order of Justice was like any other large-scale organization. It was hard for internal strife to not appear, especially for religious groups where equal importance was placed on holy worship and concepts of faith. It was easy for something to go awry without the quelling of a powerful God. The holy object of the Order of Justice was the scales of truth that split things distinctly into black and white. Within this order, the secular side and the truth side were just like opposite sides of a scale. One was black. One was white. They were split into two. The two were, as their name implied. One referred to the disorderly secular world. The other referred to pure truth. The truth side was displeased with the secular side performing an unbalanced holy exchange. They believed that exchanging money, lust, and dirty desires for the bestowment of the divine power of truth was grave blaspheme. The secular side scoffed at the harsh doctrine of the truth side, believing it too far exceed the realm of reality. The truth side of this order had begun a purification project at an unknown time. They executed punishment on those who performed excessive holy exchanges. The hatred between the two factions had been gradually accumulating, and the so-called punishments had grown more and more vicious. Several truth executioners were born from this situation. Fairchild was one of the famous ones. He might not be the most powerful, but his customary truth mirror punishment caused people to pale just from hearing its description. Its basic concept was as follows. The sinner must die under the same circumstances caused by whatever ability gained through the secular exchange. Luo Nan somewhat understood the situation now. It was no wonder that Fairchild ignored Huang Bingzhen's dying state. Looking at things now, Fairchild basically wanted Huang Bingzhen to die via soul annihilation. From the perspective of the truth side, it was quite disgusting for there to be people such as Huang Bingzhen living in this world. The problem was that Luo Nan had destroyed Fairchild's intentions. Fairchild did not come to cause Luo Nan troubles immediately. He was following his duty as part of the purification project. He still had a target he needed to resolve. Not too far away ahead of Fairchild, Guo Ju did his utmost to calm down, but it was useless. His entire body was shivering with fear, because he was well aware that the tall and large man standing behind him was seeking his life. This was a matter as simple as breathing for Fairchild. Fairchild walked to Guo Ju's side and sized him up a few times. His lips opened to utter in a deep booming voice. It was a sound that seemed to directly strike the heart from the eardrums. You don't need to worry just based on yourself for now. You didn't break away from the real purpose of the exchange, with the results of exchanging for a secular item using a secular price. But who gave you the right to engage in blaspheming the truth? Guo Ju opened his mouth since he wanted to speak, yet he was unable to find an appropriate reason for his behavior. He did not have even an ounce of the courage he displayed before. The color of his face grew all the more paler as it neared transparency. What seeped out from within was entirely despair. Everyone else in the room was shocked speechless for a time. No one had ever expected that Guo Ju would fear Fairchild to this degree. The reputation and power this executioner held within the order of justice was just more than one could imagine. Seems like things aren't good. Cat Eyes communicated with Luo Nan, and he Yuan through the encrypted channel. She inevitably complained about Luo Nan. It would have been better to let that fellow Huang Bingzhen die. He's clearly scum. Oh right, what did they do to attract the ears of truth? Chapter 101, Fairchild Part 22. Translator, Strivon. Cat Eyes must have forgotten that she had praised Luo Nan for adopting this stance. As for her current question, Luo Nan knew the answer to it. Luo Nan swept his gaze across the ground where Zhu Weilan had fallen. He sighed a breath of relief as he confirmed that Uncle Zhu had only received a mental attack and was not in any fatal danger. Luo Nan's gaze then fell onto the 3 scrapped robots. He pondered whether or not the special storage unit was still retrievable. The Faith product inside was installed for the sake of Huang Bingzhen, Guo Ju, and similar people. It was also the cause of today's matter. The unconscious Huang Bingzhen was blessed. The awake Guo Ju was stuck in a complete tragedy. Guo Ju's body was just like a shaking sieve right now as he gazed stiffly forwards. Fairchild stood behind him, and whenever Fairchild asked a question, Guo Ju would answer. Not a single thought of whether or not his life could be saved crossed his mind. Fairchild's voice was like a fist that endlessly clenched and squeezed out everything inside Guo Ju's head. As for what would be left behind, only truth would know. Thanks to Guo Ju, Fairchild's attention still remained elsewhere. Luo Nan and Cat Eyes had the chance of respite. Cat Eyes yelled into the encrypted channel, "Where's everyone else?" The encrypted channel began to flood with messages. A fellow named Red Fox, who was dispatched after Cat Eyes, arrived at the scene. He had already started to give up and retreat. Fairchild. If I go in, it's a free kill for him. There's no point, even if Kitty's there. Do we have any other comrades who want to go die? Bamboo Pole, who Luo Nan had worked together with once before, had also been one of the people dispatched. Fox plus Cat X2 is still a freebie for him. You guys actually still have enough life in you to send out information. It really is quite astonishing. Another person called Papercut divulged some practical information. I've personally witnessed this earless man in action. He took on the master of the metal storm head-on. The shield of truth is simply broken. Are you sure you're still alive? Bamboo Pole concluded. Be smart about it. First, Neil, make it easier for this Jude of the Order of Justice to kill you. Make it a swift death. At this time, he Yuan transmitted more detailed information. Though Fairchild is an all-rounder type ability user, he's still the strongest in his power of faith. He is one of the few mad believers who is able to receive the holy force of the scales of truth and form the shield of truth. He becomes unyielding and unshakable for at least 90 minutes, gaining defensive ability on the level of an extraordinary. Cat Eyes' eyes twitched just reading all of this. Hey, this information is useless. First, tell us how to deal with him. To all those dispatched for the operation and have yet to arrive on the scene, change your destination to the neighboring Haipu Hotel on Yulin Block. And what's the meaning of this? He Yuan responded calmly. Fairchild has a tendency to go hysterical while executing his purification work. Currently, there is no one who is a match for him among the deployed personnel. They will just cause unnecessary stimulation for Fairchild. Thus, we must redeploy and avoid tactics that add oil to the fire. I've already informed the society. Powerful supporters will be simultaneously engaging in negotiations. It's better to negotiate. This person may engage in great slaughter within the order, but he keeps a low profile on the outside. Bamboo Pole proposed the following. Kitty, share your perspective with us. Let's put our heads together and make a plan. We haven't engaged in direct confrontation yet. If we can reason with him and give each other some leeway, then things would be for the best. Luo Nan was unable to participate in this kind of conversation. After all, the target of this operation was no longer the human-faced arachnid. There was a more immediate trouble in the form of Fairchild. But he was not being completely idle right now, since Fairchild had his eyes on him constantly, in a way others would find hard to comprehend. Luo Nan was on the receiving end. He had to endure it. At last, Guo Ju's calamity had ended. Fairchild approached from behind his back, no longer paying any mind to Guo Ju. Only now did Guo Ju bend his knees. His entire body kneeled softly to the ground. He watched Fairchild from behind in a daze. Fairchild swaggered within a dazzling white light. Finally, Guo Ju's head struck the ground as he lost consciousness. Good news. There's a way out. You have to hold on. Several pieces of information appeared in the encrypted channel. Guo Ju's narrow, difficult, and lucky escape instantly gave the members of the society some hope. Today, this ears of truth did not seem to have an especially intense killing intent. However, several people soon felt baffled. They had been watching from Cat Eyes' shared perspective and had noticed something. Fairchild's gaze deviated from their direction by a minute angle. It gave them a feeling of discomfort from just watching it. Kitty, who are you looking at? Mr. Luo, Cat Eyes replied simply. Only now did several people realize that Luo Nan, the person who had begun the operation and had everyone gathered, had yet to speak for a long time since everyone started coming into the channel. Hey, he's still alive, right? Bamboo Pole, who had once worked with Luo Nan, had a deeper understanding of Luo Nan than the others. From Bamboo Pole's perspective, Luo Nan was a professional in his field, being a psychic. At the same time, Luo Nan was an extremely young and inexperienced student. His psychic drawings were astonishing, but he did not display any particular talent in handling affairs. On the night they worked together, every one of their actions was planned by Bamboo Pole and He Yuan. Occasionally, Luo Nan would reveal something extraordinary like the time when Cat Eyes had courted disaster with him. This was to be expected though, now that he thought about it. If a 16-year-old high school student, who immersed himself in self-logic as a psychic most of the time, was able to coordinate social conversations, handle affairs, and do all kinds of things, they would not be a genius but a monster. Bamboo Pole had very practical concerns. Would this half-grown kid be able to endure facing against the #1 executioner of the Order of Justice? Not only did this require courage, it also required intelligence, experience, training, and even a little bit of luck. Luo Nan had yet to respond. Everyone in the encrypted channel was unsure if he had noticed these messages. "Kitty, what's up with your partner?" He has a lot of pressure." Cat Eyes shifted her gaze as she replied, letting everyone in the encrypted channel see Luo Nan's appearance. His appearance was just as Cat Eyes had described. Luo Nan's body and his face were clearly a bit frozen. His expression appeared lifeless. His gaze stared straight ahead, meeting with Fairchild's gray pupils. Both of them were expressionless, but Fairchild's body language was lively. His body was in harmony from top to bottom, revealing calmness, callousness, and might. As for Luo Nan, the muscles of his entire body were completely paralyzed. Anyone could see his tenseness and pressure. "Hey, hurry up and wake up. Breathe and relax. He can't hear you. We're screwed. He's completely suppressed. It's already quite decent for him to meet Fairchild's gaze. How old is he? Fairchild won't give a damn about his age. That Huang Bingzhen isn't that much older than him." Within this fuss, some people were baffled. Why is he concentrated on Luo Nan? What is Fairchild thinking? Is he able to tell that Luo Nan is a psychic? Their order is absolutely not lacking in psychics. They were founded on them in the first place. Waves and waves of information streamed through the encrypted channel. Some people used text. Some people used speech. Some simply used their thoughts. It was a mess of different methods of communication that formed a chaotic soup. But then in the next instant, all the chaos froze. Fairchild had opened his mouth. His deep voice clearly circulated within the enclosed room. "Chains, not bad." Chapter 102, Debating the Truth, Part 1-2. Translator, Strivon. What chains? Of the people participating in the encrypted channel, only he Yuan had somewhat of an understanding. Everyone else was completely lost. Cat Eyes had once experienced them before. She knew what they were, but it was extremely complicated for her to explain it to them clearly. She could only simply say, "It's a skill Mr. Luo uses on the mental plane." This explanation actually mixed up the nature and technique of Luo Nan's ability, but no one was able to point this out. Luckily, Fairchild possessed his own view only. He was not able to receive the information from the encrypted channel. He spoke calmly in his deep and low voice. "Looking at your chains is like looking at an airtight prison. The rules, regulations, restrictions, controls. Your prison possesses a feeling of orderliness that makes one pleasantly surprised. I really like it." This kind of evaluation in this kind of form was really unexpected. It was both admiration and idle gossip. Additionally, it gradually eased the tension that was previously in the air. This was a good beginning. However, there was still a problem. Everyone was able to tell that Luo Nan was not experienced at handling such situations. His responses were extremely slow. He had missed his best chance to talk. He did not respond at all, while facing Fairchild directly, even when the sound of Fairchild's voice faded away. He maintained his silence from beginning to end. From the perspective of the observers, the alleviation of the atmosphere barely lasted for 2 seconds, before turning back to being awkward and stiff. The encrypted channel was in a hubbub. He wasted his chance. Cat Eyes was able to feel things clearer since she was next to him. She was a bit worried, so she stepped forward, wanting to replace Luo Nan in the conversation. She made a step, half blocking Luo Nan, and suddenly stopped. The words she had formed in her mouth could not be spoken for some reason. Her aura also became a bit weaker. She spoke with great difficulty, changing some of her words unconsciously. Mr. Fairchild, we believe this is all a misunderstanding. We were chasing a human-faced arachnid when we encountered this dirty secular exchange. We were also putting a stop to it. Fairchild continued to be expressionless. He did not even glance at Cat Eyes. He just responded with some admonishing words. The truth stands at the forefront. The secular will give way in face of its superior strength. Cat Eye's mouth gaped, but she suddenly had nothing to say. There was a more direct cause besides Fairchild's callous words. She had suddenly discovered that there was a more dangerous and direct undercurrent beneath the awkward and stiff atmosphere. The dark undercurrent flowed on the mental plane. It laid in a deep region that Cat Eyes found hard to perceive. When Fairchild opened his mouth, a mental attack set off an enormous wave, allowing Cat Eyes to get a true peek at what was going on. The sound of the rattling dark chains fed back information continuously, bringing a scent filled with vicious danger. From this, Cat Eyes was able to confirm that Luo Nan and Fairchild were still engaged in an incorporeal contest by her side. She had actually been completely ignorant of it. Cat Eyes did not know when this contest had begun, how long it had been, or when it had started. But at this moment, she truly felt that she was an outsider, and a blind one at that. Bamboo Pole discovered that something was off from within the encrypted channel. Standing at the forefront, Fairchild really seems to view Luo Nan in a favorable light. Cat Eyes did not respond. She was still recovering from the attack. In the end, Bamboo Pole did not understand the situation. He could only randomly guess. This can't go on. Fairchild has already brought out his stance. If he doesn't get a response right now, or a response that doesn't reach his expectations, who knows what he will do? How is Mr. Psychic's achievements in research and theory, soul studies and philosophy? Who's more of an expert? Also, skills shouldn't be involved in a conversation such as this. At Fairchild's level, he is able to differentiate between lies and truth. Regular speech is fine, just say what comes to mind. I'll try. Luo Nan's sudden response stunned everyone in the encrypted channel. Actually, Luo Nan had constantly been paying attention to the information from the encrypted channel. He was extremely clear on what Bamboo Pole and Red Fox were discussing and their worries. Indeed, Luo Nan and Fairchild were still probing each other in their confrontation on the mental plane. They communicated in a special way, but this did not mean that Luo Nan was content in communicating in this way. He did not really feel too well, because he was using his soul's strength continuously. The pressure his body was taking on was gradually accumulating. Achiness, pain, stiffness. Various negative influences were transmitted throughout his whole body by his nervous system. The information was gradually fed back to form a vicious and increasing loop. If everything could be satisfied using simple words to communicate, why should he take on these unnecessary risks? However, Luo Nan did not know what to say. His brain spun round and round, but no matter how much he cranked, he was unable to find the perfect means for a response. He also knew that communication between two people could never be perfect. After all, fear and pressure were taking over. Stalling for time had its limits. Bamboo Pole's reminder more or less gave him a direction. What did he want to say the most when facing Fairchild's evaluation? Luo Nan stared unwaveringly at Fairchild's callous and calm face. Several seconds passed before he took in a deep breath and spoke softly, Thank you, Mr. Fairchild. "It's over." The channel was in a clamor. Cries that he was done for happened over and over. If Luo Nan had responded this way in the first instance, things would have been fine. But to wait until now to thank him, how long did that make his reaction time be? The channel was in a mess, so Yuan, who had not spoken in some time, directly cleared it. She did not need to do this, for Luo Nan had already given up on referring to the channel. He just said what he wanted to say. "This is one of the results of my grandpa's research. I call it my heart's a prison. A prison's prison. It's erected on the basis of formatting theory." His grandfather's achievements, his grandfather's formatting theory, were the only things he could talk non-stop about like an unceasing torrent in this world. After all, he had spent 5 years of blood, sweat, and tears researching it. However, Fairchild did not talk to him to listen to a popular science version of an explanation. A couple of sentences later, Fairchild cut straight to the chase. He began to talk formally. "It has a marvelous operational method, forming special structures and functions. This is great. However, it has done a terrible job of tempering your body. Is this because it lacks a system?" This was Fairchild's criticism towards my heart's a prison. Luo Nan knew that Fairchild was absolutely correct. However, in this moment, he felt he needed to reciprocate. "Mr. Fairchild, your mental storm also lacks orderliness and a feeling of tempo." The people participating in the encrypted channel lost their voices when these words were spoken. They couldn't even say, "He's done for." Where did his boldness come from? The people in the channel finally reacted with a series of warnings. "Calm down, you need to calm down. Hold on for now. Fairchild doesn't have any bad intentions. You must not start a contention and make things worse for yourself." Unfortunately, Luo Nan no longer paid any attention whatsoever to the suggestions from the encrypted channel. He continued with his words and said, "Why is your mental storm like this?" Chapter 102, Debating the Truth, Part 2-2. Translator, Strivon. Luo Nan had thought of Rui Wen when he had opened his mouth. On that night, Rui Wen had broken the encirclement of deep blue walkers. She possessed the power to seamless shift between the material plane and the mental plane to form absolutely powerful bursts of strength. She also possessed an unmatched ability to change tempos. Luo Nan could never forget this in his life. Luo Nan had yet to truly experience Fairchild's true strength, but Rui Wen was above Fairchild just based on tempo harmonization. Fairchild lacked a merged-as-one tempo. This made the pressure that Fairchild gave off in their confrontation on the mental plane intermittent and fleeting. It was hard for the mental storm attack to reach the level of Rui Wen's explosive power. Fairchild's tempo was even lacking when compared to Elder Mo Lun's of the Bloodflame Order. However, was the gap between Fairchild and the two that obvious? Even without comparing Rui Wen, a young girl, why was it that he felt this ears of truth possessed an aura greater than that of Mo Lun? This was what Luo Nan was puzzling over. If he were to purely use speech to express himself, he would touch upon various contexts and secrets. Even if he used over 100 sentences or 1,000 sentences, he still might not be able to express himself clearly. Instead, he just used 2 or 3 sentences. Then Fairchild just simply replied, "Why?" He had simply repeated one of Luo Nan's words. Then he took a step forward, causing the entire room to practically shiver in this moment. This was not an illusion. The equipment, the furnishings, and the human bodies that were standing, sitting, kneeling, and lying down jolted a bit. The 3 wrecked robots made squeaky shaking sounds. A dazzling halo emitted a glow from Fairchild's body. The lights diffused from his chest outwards to instantly cover his entire body and illuminate the entire room. Every corner was without shadow, every detail could be seen. And at this moment, the encrypted channel exploded with information. It's the shield of truth. He's gone hysterical, one word and he's off. He's really courted death, he's screwed. The negotiations back him up. Kitty, run fast, run fast. Cat Eyes unconsciously took a step backwards, but in the end, she did not make any further steps. This was because Luo Nan, who was in front of her, did not make a single movement when facing against Fairchild's terrifying pressure. At most he coughed twice. The pressure that Luo Nan faced was far greater. However, it was on the mental plane, so he could manage it. He squinted his eyes slightly and watched the dazzling lighting and sound coming from Fairchild's body. It was inevitable for the surrounding area to be influenced by Fairchild's aura when unleashed. The shaking was not limited to the room. It seemed that the entirety of Frost River reality was shaking. Was Fairchild going to make his move? Luo Nan did not think so. At this moment, all that appeared before his eyes was an operational structure of energy and information, erected upon a fleshly body as a foundation. It was limited by the material plane. This structure could not be directly observed like those built on the mental plane. The details and the like were unable to be clearly seen. Yet most of its principles were transparently displayed. The material plane and the mental plane pressed and squeezed against each other. They mutually interfered with each other to form a vortex that could exist simultaneously on both the mental and material planes, spinning together to form a dynamic yet stable framework. Fairchild's mind and human body were merged as one within this framework. They supported each other and mutually affected each other. This was Fairchild's response. Perhaps it was hard for Fairchild to achieve Rui Wen's tempo of body and soul merging, of harmonized unification. Despite this, the state of his body and soul was erected as a stable and powerful structure. It gave one the feeling of a nuclear reactor containing an enormous power. Within this, the mental and the material interfered with each other, and intense collisions occurred at every operation. It was precise and harmonic. It was perfection. Luo Nan was dumbstruck for a time. He only understood the level of Fairchild's power just now. Additionally, this power far exceeded what Luo Nan had seen in any other person. If he had not seen this with his own eyes, he would have never imagined that an ordinary human could actually contain such an astonishing energy within their body. In the end, the storm set off on the mental plane was only the overflowing, radiating heat of this nuclear reactor. Likewise, Fairchild's answer, if translated into words, would require 1,000 sentences to be described thoroughly. The step he had taken now made things utterly clear. The basis of these two's conversation was their confrontation on the mental plane. The dark chains and the mental storm. One attacked and one defended. They were striking each other at all times, probing each other. Everything they did was just to reveal a bit of their conversation, using words to repeat what they had said. Compared to their exchanges on the material plane, perhaps what occurred on the mental plane stuck closer to their real intentions. Luo Nan was forced to admit that he was perfect for this type of communication. It was simple and direct. It saved many meaningless words. Moreover, he did not need to display a certain attitude. All of his intentions were displayed clearly within the mutual attacking and probing on the mental plane. There was only one problem. This kind of communication method was very tiresome. Luo Nan's soul could bear it, but this did not mean his body could. As such, he tried to use words this time. First, he wanted to apologize for his mistake in judgment towards Fairchild's mental storm. Apologies. However, I don't feel that my grandfather's theory is not systematic. The state that is manifested has its problems in only the method chosen. I am lacking in depth of understanding due to inexperience. Nothing else really mattered besides one point, and that was Fairchild's evaluation. He had called the formatting theory unsystematic. It made Luo Nan very discontent. The format of My Heart's a Prison was the result of systematic research. It was only that Luo Nan had chosen an unorthodox method. He had taken psychotropic drugs to gradually reconstruct the format of his nervous system in order to obtain his abilities in the end. In this process, he had neglected the issue with his body. And also, he did not have a true understanding of the nature of the operational structure of energy and information during his previous 5 years. He was convinced that if he had time, if he could start over, he would be able to harmonize his body and soul much better. At the very least, the unbalance he had currently would not have occurred. While justifying himself, Luo Nan pointed to his own body and pointed to Fairchild's body with a gesture. He used clairvoyance to observe his own cranial nerves, spinal nerve structure, and nodes, which he had polished for a near week. If he had given these regions extra stimulation and tempering during these last 5 years, then perhaps the results would have been completely different. Damn, the hell is he doing? Is this an apology, or is this an explanation? What is his grandfather's theory? Does anyone know? Within the encrypted channel, the group of zealous people were all looking stupefied. Luo Nan's disconnected phrases and gestures were bizarre no matter who looked at them. He was incomprehensible. They all speculated, but if they were the ones up there, they would certainly have dropped the ball. But in Luo Nan's case, it seemed that Fairchild had yet to make a move. Not only did he not make a move, his dark gray eyes were cast upon Luo Nan's body in seemingly utter concentration. The heck was this? Communication between a nut job and a mad believer. They were surprisingly in tune with each other. Chapter 103, Giant Vortex 1/2. Translator, Strivon. It was already 8 o'clock in the evening. The drizzling sky rain was unending. Bamboo Pole opened his umbrella and walked briskly yet calmly onto the street. An enchanting and beautiful woman quickly walked past him on the roadside. She complained to her companion in front of her in a low voice. Besides this irksome autumn rain, there had also been a light earthquake recently. Bamboo Pole continued looking all the way until the enchanting and beautiful women had faded into the stream of people. If he did not have a mission tonight, he would not mind having a chance encounter with this beautiful woman. As for how he would start hitting on her, there was no harm in saying. Actually, it wasn't an earthquake just now. Just two brothers with mental illnesses having a fervent conversation. Fairchild's voice came sounding over through the hexia. Your order is reflected upon your soul. My order is reflected upon my body. Each of us has only perfected one side of the problem while trying to fix our flaw on the other side. The difference lies in the fact that I can continue to seek a resolution. For instance, your chains. But you need to go through a challenging procedure in order to perform a systematic revision. The error lies in either the theory or in the choice, but neither will change the end result. This was the longest Fairchild had spoken tonight. He gave off the feeling that he was being drawn in due to being on the same path. It was seriously funny and strange to Bamboo Pole when he heard Fairchild's words. Wait a minute. Fairchild was implying that he was extremely interested in Luo Nan's "My Heart's a Prison" format. If nothing else, if these words were spread, it would make this Mr. Psychic and his formatting theory become greatly known, resounding in Zia City. However, would things be that easy? Bamboo Pole had his doubts. He walked into Yulin Hotel and took the elevator straight to the 89th floor. There was a restaurant on this floor, and sitting at a desk facing the window was a young man wearing a red jacket. This young man waved to him. "Hello, mate. This is the best location, and it only costs 20 credits. Bamboo Pole's lips twitched as he walked over and sat down. "The best location is a block away. Kitty will be glad to swap with you." With that said, he was able to clearly see the triangular amusement center 2 kilometers away by looking through the glass window wet from the rain. Red Fox's lips split into a grin. His expression was strange. It felt great just now when the 3 buildings shook, the spaceships about to take off. Frost River Reality had a very interesting layout. As a whole, its structure spanned 3 individual buildings, with each occupying several stories. They were painted in 2 interweaving colors, space black and silver white. They looked like a giant triangular spaceship stuck within the city. It looked like it would be able to fly into space at any time. Several minutes ago, Fairchild had released his shield of truth. It was an exaggeration to say that the buildings were shaking. Nonetheless, the intense stress radiating into the surrounding area had spanned across the material and mental planes to cover a wide space. Bamboo Pole encountered several people who thought that it was an earthquake while walking over here. A rough estimation would yield a range with a radius exceeding 3 kilometers. Fairchild's monstrous aura seriously overflowed the skies. However, Luo Nan and Cat Eyes were not really affected even though they were right in front of Fairchild. Perhaps Fairchild was really treating them favorably. Bamboo Pole was one of the technical staff. He wasn't like Red Fox. Once Red Fox was on call, he had nothing to do. As soon as Bamboo Pole sat down, he took out a folded screen, which he always kept by his side. He then began to work. He performed 2 or 3 operations and entered into the monitoring system of Frost River Reality and its surrounding buildings. Logically speaking, this was very hard to do even if he was proficient with electronics. However, the society had always possessed a share of Frost River Reality. They had quite a few of the relevant privileges. He relied on the temporary privileges provided by He Yuan in order to do this, which made things a bit easier for him. Over 1,000 monitoring feeds were switching back and forth on the flexible screen. Only an ability user with super dynamic eyesight, like Bamboo Pole, would be able to grasp the crucial information within. Red Fox took a few glances at the flexible screen, and he was completely lost. What is the point of doing these things now? Fairchild is abnormal. That radius of 3 kilometers means that he has 30 square kilometers of area control. On the contrary, he might be the ones monitoring us. Bamboo Pole did not lift his head. He continued to filter the images with his eyes. That is way too exaggerated. The shield of truth's resonance range and control range are different. It has a proportion of 10:1, so it is very difficult to deal with. After all, it is a cultivation that fuses the body and soul. How can it be the same as mental senses? Oh, I actually forgot. You are an expert on secret orders. Red Fox let out a relaxed breath. The earthquake just now really caused him a dramatic increase in stress. He felt a lot better now. Do not relax too early. Fairchild was never the type of person to keep a high profile. He actually let out the shield of truth without the slightest hesitation just now, covering 30 kilometers. He must have another objective. And what is that objective? I do not know for now. Oh, there's an opening tusk, there's trouble. After endlessly cleaning up the monitoring feed, some people's images grew more and more distinct. Bamboo Pole took these images and uploaded them to the psychic wave network. He copied the marking and pasted it into the encrypted channel, letting all those who were part of the operation see. Kitty, pay attention. The Order of Justice's secular side can't endure any longer. The Knights of Equity has already sent at least 2 small squads of 10 people total. At least half of them have entered the scene. Red Fox stared at the screen in astonishment. Wow, do you see that guitar case? I'll use some points from this operation to make a bet. That is absolutely a large caliber sniper weapon. Otherwise, it wouldn't pose a threat to Fairchild. They've already started to hold sniper positions. I'm running out of patience. An explosion of information flooded the encrypted channel once more. Strange, previously, the secular side would stick their heads in the sand like ostriches when they were discontent. Why the difference now? Are they starting a religious war? The Order of Justice is splitting. Now that is good news. The problem is that we are caught in the crossfire. He Yuan's order cut through the hubbub. Bamboo Pole, Yulin Hotel is the best sniper point of the surrounding blocks. It has to be brought under our monitoring. Avoid direct conflict with the people of the Order by all means. Understood, however, I am not a combatant. This was not a situation where temporary privileges could be used. Bamboo Pole would inevitably have to run on to the control room. He stood up, and just when he was about to move, Red Fox slapped his thigh. Look, who is that? Zhang Yingying. That girl is participating in the operation. The heck is she going in for? Bamboo Pole, after a moment of being stunned, adjusted the monitoring screen. He saw Zhang Yingying and a tall, beautiful woman wearing a jacket walk shoulder to shoulder into Frost River reality. The two had their arms hooked together. They chatted and laughed as they walked. They appeared very intimate and were very eye-catching. However, the jacket-wearing woman's extrasensory perception was sharp. Her gaze suddenly faced the monitoring cam, meeting face to face with those observing her. Her hazel pupils were bright, beautiful, and moving. But that expression and her empty smile brought some indescribably deep meanings. Bamboo Pole inexplicably felt that this woman was very familiar, but he was unable to think of who she was in this short while. Before this thought could finish, Red Fox gave him another push. Look. From their perspective, they just so happened to see a low-altitude flying shuttle pass in the skies above Frost River reality. With the fuzzy rain as a backdrop, He Yuan's slender and tall figure fell in freefall. She even made us go on standby. This isn't the main point. The main point is, will Frost River reality still exist when this is all over? Chapter 103, Giant Vortex 2/2. Translator, Strivon. There were some differences between Frost River reality now and in ordinary times. The most popular time in Frost River reality was normally around 8 p.m. at night. At first glance, there was a horde of people in the reception hall. However, most of these people were departing or were loitering around to take looks. There had been a brawl, an earthquake, police intervention, and the arrival of a few batches of special forces. In addition, there was an ambulance sending people off. No matter how bold the players were, they all had some concerns. The employees of the amusement center did not really do anything towards this. A group of supervisors followed the police's request for cooperation, as discussed between Zhu Weilun and Frost River Reality's manager, Yin Le. They did not hold any expectations towards tonight's profits. They just let the police rummage around. This was precisely the scene that Zhang Yingying encountered when she entered Frost River Reality. She could not help but sigh. If that earthquake monster makes an attack here, everyone in the reception hall will be exterminated. This flock of ignorant and lamentable people. So what does it matter if we break the law on purpose? Bai Xinyan shrugged. One must take into account trustworthiness and moral values. For instance, doctors have a responsibility towards their patients till the very end. Zhang Yingying reached out her hand to touch Bai Xinyan's face. Lo's Angels sure has amazing plastic surgery techniques. Your skin must be 10 times thicker than before. Bai Xinyan's eyes rolled. Her mouth turned as she sought to bite Zhang Yingying's finger. Zhang Yingying backed off while giggling. Just when she was about to speak some more, her eardrums slightly vibrated. The hexia transmitted. "Hello, don't waste too much time. How can you make us great masters wait?" "Bamboo pole, you peeping Tom," Zhang Yingying hissed. "You must be the one who was controlling the surveillance cams just now." "I'm monitoring. Besides executing my task, I also need to avoid capturing you guys on camera. Anyways, that hostile aura is super distinct. Don't you guys feel it?" "Are you talking about the earthquake monster?" "Of course, we know. However, right now, I'm keeping a guest company and bringing her to meet a person. White Salt has a patient here." "White Salt?" Bamboo Pole's voice suddenly spiked up an octave. "Are you sure? Is she the one wearing the tan jacket next to you?" Tusk. It's been several years, and her style has suddenly changed. I still have an impression of her wearing a white researcher's gown in my heart. Does she have a boyfriend yet? Zhang Yingying rolled her eyes, and another message cut through their communications. "Hello, Mrs. Zhang. Secretary he, Vice President he." Zhang Yingying clearly elongated her tone when she saw the communications number displayed. Zhang Yingying did not have the least bit of a good impression towards this new acquaintance, who had exposed her weak nature and pressured her to go training at the bottom of the sea. Zhang Yingying noticed that Bamboo Pole had disconnected the instant the new communications cut through. She had a rough idea towards why one does not visit a temple without a cause. There was always an ulterior motive. This contact was probably related to the mission that Bamboo Pole had just mentioned. Humph, He Yuan was really putting on airs. However, He Yuan had no intentions of trying to regain friendly relations. She directly informed Zhang Yingying of the current situation. Since time was of the essence, she did not include too many details. She just introduced the important points. Only now did Zhang Yingying learn the identity of the earthquake monster just now. Luo Nan is in direct confrontation with Fairchild. Is he seeking his own death? It looks like Fairchild won't harm him for now, but what will happen next? It is very likely that he will be drawn into the conflict between the truth side and the secular side of the order of justice. We need a few reinforcement points right now to be prepared for accidents. Can you join? Zhang Yingying was speechless for some time. She had introduced this kid with great potential into the society. Why was it that now it seemed that Luo Nan had become a troublemaker that specialized in getting involved with matters over and over? She did not think it over too long. She glanced at Bai Xinyan. "It's no problem for me to join, but I have a friend." Bai Xinyan. Huh, you know her. Bai Xinyan raised an eyebrow when she saw Zhang Yingying cast her gaze at her. In the next moment, her wristband vibrated. She saw who it was and immediately burst into a smile. "Hello, sis, it's been a long time. How are you doing?" Zhang Yingying's eyes bulged open. She wanted to open her mouth and ask, but she saw that Bai Xinyan and He Yuan were chatting enjoyably and freely. Zhang Yingying could only gesture repeatedly with her hands for some time. She was trying to convey, "How do you know hers?" Bai Xinyan just blinked her eyes toward Zhang Yingying. Then she gave He Yuan a definite reply. "Not a problem. No matter what, I'm at least half part of the society. And it has been a long time since I've come back to Xia City. I don't know what's the level of the people here. It is good for me to have a chance of close observation." However, she did not completely comply with He Yuan's plans. She hesitated for a moment and said, "Do you have any tactics that are more proactive? Right now, the situation is very messy. The most important issue is to clarify just who is our friend and who is our enemy." This dialogue was not kept hidden from people. The participating members of the operation, such as Bamboo Pole, were able to hear it through He Yuan's channel. They had the same feeling. This operation was a hunting operation with a human-faced arachnid as their target, but it had changed into a battle encounter with Fairchild, the Ears of Truth. Immediately after, it had turned into an inner conflict of the order of justice. The continuous shifts of conflicts made people at a loss for what to do. They really only came here to surround and hunt a human-faced arachnid. Unfortunately, strong characters appeared one after another, with continuously increasing might. The situation had turned into a giant vortex. The momentum grew more and more ferocious. It looked like the situation was headed in no direction at all. They only acted as support and reinforcements, yet the pressure was enormous. In fact, right now there were already people who had completely given up and turned tail. Red Fox never had a strong desire to fight. Right now, the Order of Justice is having an internal catfight. It isn't appropriate for us to participate, right? Secret orders are composed mostly of madmen. If a full-blown war is ignited between the society and this order, who will take responsibility? When there's one, there are two. Immediately, there was someone named Metal Box giving Red Box a like. This Metal Box had yet to arrive at Yulin Hotel, but he did not want to come anyway. The society's mission briefing talked about a human-faced arachnid. Where the hell is this damn human-faced arachnid? I just see Fairchild. How will the points be divided and calculated when the mission is over? This mission is far too unreasonable. The Wilderness Explorers Society was never an organization that possessed powerful binding clauses. Additionally, it was hard to truly expect strict obedience from a group of ability users. For example, in the last operation that targeted a human-faced arachnid, Black Beetle did not follow a single one of He Yuan's words. He just withdrew and experienced no repercussions afterwards. Moreover, this operation was turning more and more chaotic. People had an excuse to quit and get away from it. With these words from Red Fox and Metal Box, even Bamboo Pole was emotionally affected for a moment. This was despite the fact that he had a bit of a friendship with Luo Nan through joint combat. Now, what about the others? Zhang Yingying just entered the encrypted channel and saw this scene that seemed to be on the edge of collapse. She was stupefied for a moment. She turned to look at Bai Xinyan, not knowing what to say. Bai Xinyan still had a sweet smile just as before. That is about right. She was not a member of the society. She did not have a hexia. She was unable to see the changes within the encrypted channel. Right now, she was even waiting for He Yuan's reply. However, before He Yuan could reply, a surging wave was conducted outwards from Frost River Reality's internal activity area. Attack! Terrorist attack! Area A's special forces were ambushed in the room. The bunch of them died. The information that was transmitted was not particularly clear. However, a young man and a young woman had just met up in front of Frost River Reality's entrance. The pair found it hard to talk to each other, and they were particularly susceptible to this information. After a moment of shock, the young man rushed inside the reception hall without saying any words. The young woman was unable to stop him. She shrieked, "Zhu Lei!" This shriek was like a fuse suddenly set aflame. In addition, the young man's powerful figure burst through the crowd, bringing chaos. The crowd in the reception hall exploded a second later. Chapter 104, Balancing 1/2. Translator, Strivon. Within the room of Area A, Cat Eyes spat out a nervous breath, forcing herself to shift her attention away from the mess within the encrypted channel. But when her gaze changed directions within the room, it still fell onto the two people that were continuing to communicate with each other. She still felt that the big quarrel within the encrypted channel was a much happier place to be. When the entire situation was mixed into a rotten mess by the stormy vortex, the eye of the storm centered on certain people. These people were still completely unaware. Disregard Fairchild. He was one of the most powerful ability users in Zia City. He could enter the ranks of extraordinary. As for the other person, just why? Before this thought could finish, Cat Eyes saw Luo Nan unconsciously take a step forward, closing the distance between him and Fairchild to be within 3 steps. They were so close that it seemed that they could reach out and touch each other. Actually, Luo Nan really did reach out with his hand. His hand waved out at an angle, and it looked like it grazed the top of Fairchild's head. Fairchild did not bat an eye. Instead, he maintained that completely serious and focused look. Luo Nan withdrew his hand and spread it out. "This is waste heat you have here." "I agree with this description. It's waste heat. How can you control it?" "I am precisely facing this issue. My issue with my fleshly body requires a dangerous procedure to resolve it, but it can still be done in theory. Your issue is fundamentally based on an error with logic. How can you possibly resolve it?" Cat Eyes could not help but caress her forehead. She felt that the train of thoughts between Luo Nan and Fairchild had already entered a level that outsiders could not understand, and their words were trending deeper and deeper into abstraction. Luo Nan did not about care what others thought. Everything was fine as long as he and the person he was facing, Fairchild, understood as well. Ever since Luo Nan had wanted to expound on whether or not formatting theory was systematic, Luo Nan had tried to use words to substitute the exchange on the mental plane. He still had some influence from it, and he was convinced that he was best suited to this sort of communication method. Luo Nan and Fairchild revolved around the core that was the structure and order of the mental and material planes. Continuously deeper discussions led to the rules of the mental plane, the order of the material plane, the interference and influences between the two, body and soul merging and tempo changing, and more. Many things were involved, and Luo Nan only understood half of it. Either that or he knew how things were, but not why they were so. However, no matter what sort of thoughts and questions he tossed out, Fairchild was able to understand and respond. Fairchild used the near-perfect shield of truth state to give the most direct examples. Likewise, Fairchild's self-explanatory state was able to draw resonance and insight within Luo Nan. Luo Nan stood on the theoretical foundation of formatting theory. He combined self-practice with the exquisite demonstration he observed on that night between Rui Wen and Jack. He was able to put forth things that could make Fairchild's eyes glisten, like soul configuration, body and soul merging, soul breathing, and so on. Luo Nan's muddled and chaotic thoughts gradually became clarified through these course of events. The most notable clarification was in the field of mutual interference between the material and mental planes. Some things were apparently right but actually wrong, so they were rooted out completely. His mind was clear, unprecedentedly clear. In comparison, the pressure his body was facing was really nothing. However, as these two clarified their reasonings, an unseen vague contradiction appeared. The contradiction mainly occurred with Fairchild. When this Ears of Truth saw the My Heart's a Prison format and the advantages of soul breathing, he gave great praise to the orderliness that they brought to the mental plane. However, no matter how much he wanted to achieve these things, they were not something that could be achieved by observation alone. The structure of Fairchild's body and soul could be seen as a nuclear reactor. It was a powerful structural system that had its foundation mainly established on the material plane. Therefore, its main area of effect would also lie on the material plane. This was reflected in his powerful physique and extraordinary levels of defensive ability. This was a powerful structural system. It possessed high degrees of order and was relatively sealed off. The mutual effects between the body and the soul would find it hard to break free from their respective positions, no matter the side. Because this was so, Fairchild was able to obtain the powerful force of a strong fleshly body and simultaneously have a limitation on the development on the mental plane. The storm he formed on the mental plane was only the recycling of the spillover heat of his nuclear reactor. Luo Nan was able to place himself on par with Fairchild, but he could take out Rui Wen as an example and do a comparison. Rui Wen's body and soul merging pursued the seamless shifting between multiple planes. She could rapidly jump between the different frequencies of the material and the mental. She possessed adaptability, improvisation, and explosive power that were inconceivable. Fairchild was fixed to a single level, a single frequency. He took his structure and refined it to the peak, slowly expanding its range of influence. Luo Nan was able to take note of the merits and drawbacks of these two different methods. He could only say that if Rui Wen and Fairchild were to swap places last Sunday night, the particle cannon that was fired at the artificial lake in the park may not have had an effect. However, rewind a little bit more. If Fairchild was in the situation of being sent into unconsciousness by the controlling pulse to his brain, it would have been very hard for him to wake up by himself. He could only get trampled on. Of course, if one wanted to make Fairchild go unconscious with the pulse, it would be better and more straightforward to just roast his brain. From Luo Nan's level of understanding, Fairchild had enough power. His nuclear reactor, the structural system that was formed from the secret cultivation technique, the shield of truth that came from the order of justice, had already exceeded all imagination in terms of firmness and stability. However, this was far from perfect in Fairchild's perspective. The goal of cultivation is to explore the truth. We need to observe the world in a more comprehensive manner to discover the deeply hidden marvels of the world, to make the order of the world definite. Nothing is more important than observation. Observation is how humanity understands the world. Giving order to the world is the most crucial ability. Currently, I have already reached the limits of what I can probe at the level I can access. My current structural system is limiting my observational ability. I am unable to increase the depth of it, and I am having a hard time making progress. This is completely unacceptable. Then do you know that there is someone staring at your steel-like body with a salivating mouth? Luo Nan understood what Fairchild was pursuing, but Luo Nan did not believe that he was headed in the right direction. The reason why your observation is limited is because of your structural system itself. I call it the high degree of order with self-format. Right now, your self-format is constantly influencing and disturbing your external surroundings. Your self-format absorbs negative entropy, causing an increase in entropy to appear with the heaven and earth format of the external world and generating waste heat. It is normal for there to be disorder and a lack of tempo. The fact that you are able to make use of your format isn't really proof that you're able to cast free from this format and start anew. It just shows that your expansion of the controlling range of your self-format endlessly warps the heaven and earth format, the format of the world. Through this, you influence the mental plane from the material plane. As for me, I do the complete opposite. I influence the material plane from the mental plane. From this perspective, Cat Eye's judgment that Fairchild was an all-rounder type was incorrect. Fairchild intrinsically was still on the material plane. He was a physical enhancement type from head to tail. However, he was powerful to the peak. He was able to form an astonishing interfering force on the mental plane. Luo Nan thought of when he had understood soul breathing and had a dramatic increase in soul strength. He was able to interfere from the mental plane to the material plane to form an aureola, a shadow image, and bizarre forms. This too ought to be a manifestation of waste heat. Chapter 104, Balancing 2/2. Translator, Strivon. Theory and practice confirmed one another, allowing Luo Nan to feel his mind grow clearer and clearer without obstruction. He stopped caring about whether or not he was wrong. He just spoke his mind. He took all the thoughts within his mind, and through words and demonstrations on the mental plane, he displayed it all down to the bone. For a self-format that's mentally focused, one only needs to concentrate on the rationality of the operational structure of energy and information, on whether or not it is efficient. Changes and revisions can be done at any time, but when it comes to the fleshly body, changing it is extremely difficult. It is like an inspiring illusion of a designer. The designer could bring out a refined rendering, but there would always be a distance from a practical application. For a self-format that's materially focused, one needs to consider the paths of the inner organs, blood, nerves, muscle, bones, and so on. The precision required even includes aspects like cells and biomacromolecules. This is like the work of an architect. Every kind of material has to be given sufficient consideration. Every single structure needs to be practical. Luo Nan did not say these things without thinking. These were the subtleties that were embodied in Fairchild's demonstration just before. The micro-level fine structural composition moved and amazed Luo Nan with its perfection, even if it was just the tip of the iceberg. Observation is the vocation of the mentally enhanced. Observation is used to experience and understand the operational laws of all of the world's living beings, and try to predict a more refined and effective operational structure of energy and information. Oh, it could be called configuring. One seeks to form a perfect preconfiguration. Luo Nan felt more and more that the word configuration that Jack had mentioned was really concise and marvelous. He could not help but use the word once more. For a physically enhanced, one should focus on the practical reconstruction of the configuration in order to manifest control power and alteration ability towards the material plane. However, you use a materially focused ability to do work that is mentally focused. Obviously, this is very hard to do successfully. This defies the material laws. Fairchild let Luo Nan talk and demonstrate without end. Even though there were many things that were banal within Luo Nan's words, even though Luo Nan was repeating things over and over, Fairchild listened quietly from beginning to end. This was because he knew that Luo Nan was not trying to lecture him or prove something. Luo Nan was just combing through his own understanding once more. This lasted until Luo Nan clarified the distinction between the mentally focused and the materially focused. Fairchild then asked simply, why can't one balance the two and attend to both? Balance? Luo Nan suddenly stopped and was a bit lost in thought. Yes, why can't it be balanced? It is clearly possible. Fairchild mentioned this without thinking. However, Luo Nan had a real-life example. Rui Wen, who was still in a coma. Even though she had a slender figure, she was a young girl who possessed inconceivable abilities. Her short few minutes of slaughtering attacks were the most brilliant of demonstrations given to Luo Nan. Luo Nan had once believed that the two different methods of Rui Wen and Fairchild each had their own merits, but right now, he suddenly discovered that Rui Wen's configuration of body and soul merging was the greatest refined model in revealing the effects of having the mental and the material plane in equilibrium. From Luo Nan's current level understanding, it was nearly perfect. This is enough. Cat Eyes had reached the limits of her patience during Luo Nan's idleness. It was a complete disaster within the society's encrypted channel. Metal Box had withdrawn from the operation, and Red Box and Paper Cut were also on the verge of quitting. The situation that He Yuan let unfold had long since turned different from the powerful style she exhibited before. Cat Eyes was one of the people trapped in a dangerous situation, waiting to be rescued. Naturally, she felt upset. And right at this time, this dude, Luo Nan, was still speaking dialogue that turned back and forth from suddenly being enigmatic to being cliché. Fairchild could bear it, but she could not. Cat Eyes simply smacked Luo Nan on the back. Nobody's getting anything done on the outside, huh? Luo Nan fell straight forward when he was hit by Cat Eyes' palm. Luckily, Cat Eyes had quick reactions and managed to grab onto his shoulder. Otherwise, he would have fallen headfirst next to Fairchild's foot. Remember, Cat Eyes had shared her perspective. Not a bit of Luo Nan's situation could be hidden from the encrypted channel. He Yuan's cold voice cut across. What's going on? Zhang Yingying exclaimed in astonishment. Heartbreaker palm, you. Cat Eyes was flabbergasted. God knows what happened. Luo Nan, this kid, had a critical imbalance between his body and soul, but this was not enough to make him this weak. Fairchild had a different reaction to Cat Eyes' blank response. He was not surprised at all. He just shifted his gaze towards an area above with no object in sight. Over there, Luo Nan responded awkwardly. During his selfless demonstration on the mental plane, he had actually subconsciously let his soul pull some distance from his fleshly body. This one accident caused his soul to leave his body. Luckily, he had cut deep into the mental plane. Fairchild, who had been constantly communicating with him, was able to lock onto his position. Going into the out-of-body state was not that bad. However, his fleshly body had to suffer the consequences later on. Luo Nan sighed and was about to head back to his body when Fairchild's thoughts cut across, continuing the previous dialogue just as before. Balancing isn't a compromise, rather it is a revision that is purer. Have you had a taste of it before? Merging with the rays of truth is like sleeping within a womb. Every breath links together the inner and outer world. It is truly breathing out the old and breathing in the new, getting rid of filth and bringing in purity. Fairchild had made a description that was a bit abstract and confusing, but his sincere emotions fused with the storm on the mental plane, allowing Luo Nan to have a blurry personal experience. We can give it a shot, come help me. Anyone else would have been confused by Fairchild's expression of words. Luo Nan, however, was able to understand without any difficulty. Intense curiosity suddenly overflowed from his mind, causing him to forget the fact that he was still in an out-of-body state. The dark chains then shook to strike Fairchild's mental storm. Luo Nan's dark chains constantly remained on guard amidst their direct exchange, no matter how long it was. However, the attacker and the defender were intentionally switched this time around. The dark chains pressed down on the mental storm for the first time, pressing into Fairchild's controlling range. The power of the My Hearts, a prison format, was instantly used, taking the orderliness that this format possessed and sending it into the depths of Fairchild's layer of waste heat, the mental storm. Luo Nan was increasing his hold in a way, like when he did so against Rui Wen and Ink. In an instant, Luo Nan's consciousness briefly cut into Fairchild's range of mental senses. A 300-meter radius area was brought into his clairvoyance. The resulting cross-section covered a vast space of 300,000 square meters. The entirety of Frost River reality was covered. A high-speed flow of energy and information rapidly converged with a bang. They went through a special configuration that filtered and analyzed the energy and information, arranged them into levels, and made them distinct and concise. Fairchild closed his eyes as he quietly took in this wonderful experience. The marvels of this experience were not as simple as experiencing an all-encompassing perception. Observation brought with it order, and order is the truth. At the same time, observation brought with it pressure. For Luo Nan, receiving the information from Fairchild's mental senses was like taking the hits of a giant flail revolving at high speeds. His entire soul was trembling violently. Though Fairchild's range of senses was inferior to his, Fairchild's level and depth of understanding far exceeded Luo Nan's. It was like a super-rich nutrient, and it gave Luo Nan difficulties that were beyond his capabilities. If Luo Nan was not in his out-of-body state and was in his fleshly body, then he would have vomited blood. However, in his out-of-body state, Luo Nan was able to feel the strength of his soul have some clear growth under Fairchild's stimulation, and he was unable to suppress it. "What the heck are you up to this time?" An emotion like a bitter laugh surfaced in Luo Nan's heart as Fairchild made a sudden step towards Luo Nan. The snow-white gown fluttered to reveal a fist that had been concealed inside. The fist launched straight out, smashing into the chest of Luo Nan's unconscious body. A radiance like liquid mercury circulated and surged between the tip of Fairchild's fist and Luo Nan's chest. Chapter 105, Sniper Power 1/2. Translator, Strivon. Cat Eyes was like a giant cat with puffed-up fur the instant Fairchild unleashed his fist. She pounced forth. A powerful jolt was transmitted from Luo Nan's body the moment she supported him by the shoulder with her hand. She felt like she had been electrocuted, and her hand was flung off. Her entire body then took the attack. However, her touching Luo Nan was not the most key factor for her intense response. In this instant, it did not matter whether it was within the encrypted channel or her intrinsic senses. Intense warning signals were sent shooting everywhere. What was troublesome was that the warning signals and stimulation had many firing points going off in different directions, different intensities, and different distances. Together, they built a giant net of danger that made one's scalp go numb. Cat Eye's split-second decision skills were now tested to their limits. However, Fairchild's single fist wiped out at least 90% of her options off the table. Only a single viable path was laid bare before her eyes. Luo Nan's unconscious body was flung even faster than Cat Eye's hand. His body flew into the air and smashed into the wall behind with a loud bang. A quicksilver-like radiating glow permeated Luo Nan's entire body with its illumination the instant he collided. The glow then faded without a trace. Luo Nan's body lost all strength and fell, sticking to the base of the wall and sitting on the ground. Cat Eyes moved backward to arrive at Luo Nan's side. However, she did not bring him up. Instead, she pressed against his neck, pushed him down, and got down beside him. The instant she completed these series of actions, 2 thuds sounded out from the soundproof wall of the room. Several adults were blown away by the explosion of wall insulation, drywall, and other particles of building materials through the wall. A cloud of turbid smoke and dust hung in the air, covering more than half of the room. However, the dark red curves of ballistic trajectories soon cut this cloud of dust into bits and pieces. Special rounds bombarded one after another against the ground, and walls to explode in sequence. They broke apart the smoke screen as the sound of powerful lightning interweaved together. The interior of the room was transformed into a sheet of ruins in an instant. As one could imagine, if Luo Nan had remained in his previous position, he would have turned into Swiss cheese in the blink of an eye. Someone else was also within the scope of danger, Zhu Weilan, or Officer Zhu. He had taken Fairchild's mental storm attack earlier on and had sat dazed on the ground. He was in the middle of recovering with all his might when the torrent of bullets came pelting down. Fragments and dust had flown through the air, enveloping him within. When the wave of attacks arrived upon Zhu Weilan, he did not receive any fatal damage due to the exoskeleton armor he was wearing. Instead, he was completely awakened from the dazed state of his soul. He performed a few tactical movements by instinct and ducked into the corner at breakneck speed. In the end, he managed to avoid the brunt of the attack. The others in the room were not as fortunate. The 2 police officers, who had tried to drag Luo Nan and Cat Eyes earlier on, had been background characters for quite some time. However, this wave of attacks caused them to fall instantly. It was unknown whether they were dead or alive. Guo Ju, who had been kneeling unconscious all this time, was the worst of the bunch to be hit by the wave of attacks. Large-caliber sniper rounds had struck his back, and the upper half of his body had been smashed to smithereens. Flesh and blood sprayed everywhere. He could not be more dead than he was now. The astringent smell of blood assailed them, combined with a boiling, killing intent that was like an invisible roasting flame. The sensations assaulted Cat Eye's perception, forcing her to shear them endlessly layer by layer. Only in doing so was she able to eliminate these interferences and grasp the crucial information. But the problem was that the enemy knew very well the absolute power and unparalleled defenses of Fairchild's shield of truth. Long-ranged firepower may have low effectiveness, but it was still the only option. No one would want to get near, within 100 meters of Fairchild. This left Cat Eyes with no chance to display her long-range perception ability. The original target of the hail of fire was the ears of truth, Fairchild. He withdrew his fist upon striking Luo Nan and blasting him away. He did not adopt any particular combat stance. Instead, the aura with a luster like quicksilver enveloped his body, circulating him and looking very thick. No matter the projectile, all the rounds lost their kinetic energy right before this inconceivable aura. The powerful sounds and lightning of the rounds were also blocked by the aura. It was a marvel that defied the laws of physics. Cat Eyes could feel a slight chill seep through the cracks of her teeth. She felt a deep sense of unfathomedness. Fairchild's display was of high luminosity and thus attracted most of the firepower. Cat Eyes and Officer Zhu now had a chance to catch their breaths. The sounds of miserable shrieking, crying, and moaning was endlessly heard. Though several of the players of Frost River Reality had left the site after the series of incidents, there were still a few people remaining. They might have fainted, or they were just onlookers, but these people did not evacuate immediately. 2 snipers of the Knights of Equity had opened fire, and 2 ballistic trajectories of bullets had cut through the area, turning the region into hell on earth. The degree the room was ruined far exceeded the chaotic and miserable outside. Aside from the shock bullets from the very beginning, with their explosions reaching 170 decibels, no one had uttered a sound from beginning to end. For some people, it was too late. For some people, the situation made no sense. There was also Cat Eyes. She caught 2 big breaths, took all her emotions, and poured it into the encrypted channel. How can you all make it so easy for the Order of Justice to deploy 2 sniper positions? Bamboo Pole revealed a helpless expression. We didn't even know if we were going to make a move. What could we have done? Also, who could have possibly imagined that the Order of Justice would cause this big of a mess? Internal strife should be handled in a special manner. He sighed and continued providing information on the immediate situation. Right now, the Order of Justice is sending people inside without end. Aside from going inside Frost River Reality, a portion of their people have gone to the top floors of the surrounding 3 buildings. My ability to monitor those regions have been blocked. I don't know what they're doing. I just sent a request to the Society for commandeering a satellite or an atmospheric monitoring balloon. However, it may be too slow to meet our pressing needs. The wavering Red Fox had been by Bamboo Pole's side all this time. He supplemented with his own complaints. The Order of Justice already has people stationed where we are at right now. I don't know when, but they're coming to take over the control room. Damn, everything's going downhill. Where are the negotiators of the Society? He Yuan's response was simple. The 3 first oblatums of the Order of Justice have cut off communications. We are unable to contact them. Zhang Yingying tasked twice. From my recollection, those first oblatums are all of the secular side. What a coincidence. There are 3 buildings surrounding us, 1 first oblatum for each building. A strange silence suddenly emerged within the encrypted channel. A full 2 seconds passed before Zhang Yingying whistled. Yep, secret orders are filled with lunatics. We shouldn't need to pick a side in their civil war, right? Yuan skipped over this topic. Verify Mr. Luo's state. He's still not dead yet, replied Cat Eyes unhappily. She looked over Luo Nan's face a few times and added, his eyelids are moving. If he's not pretending to be asleep, his brain is in a state of low conscious activity. Perhaps he is trying to understand that iron fist of love from Fairchild. Damn it, I'm just guessing over here. Cat Eyes' answer represented the views of nearly everyone in the encrypted channel. They might have been surprised by Fairchild's fist strike, but they were not worried about Luo Nan's safety. This was probably the power of a dialogue between a nutjob and a mad believer. Their means of conversation could not be held to common sense, so those in the encrypted channel should not engage in further absurd speculations, lest they also became infected by mental illnesses. Cat Eyes' brows shot up at this time. She keenly sensed a change in the outside world. The attack is over. Did you guys make a move? Not at all. Zhang Yingying expressed her innocence. However, Yuan did not reply. In the end, it was Bamboo Pole who made a confirmation. Secretary, he got rid of one. For the other sniper, a buff lad has rushed in the fray. He looks very familiar. Oh, I remember now. It was the little fellow who held off Black Wolf at the Limestone Water Village. It seems that Mr. Luo's classmate has arrived. Is he really not an ability user? That's a wrap for this installment. Thank you all for watching and supporting Lord of the Stories. If you enjoyed this tale, please hit the like button, share it, and subscribe for more amazing stories. You can also explore other series updated daily in our playlists. Have a fantastic day and see you in the next episode.